Hi everyone, here is an example of how to create a simple program with a class. We are going to create, see I've done a bunch of examples here of various things. Let's do a soccer player class. So I need my soccer player. And I'm going to put class on it so I know it's the class. I'm also going to do a soccer player main, so I know that's my main program. This is where we will run the program from. In the soccer player class, we first need to define the class. Python is an easy language to define a class in. You type in class, and then we'll type in soccer player. Notice how I'm not using the underscores. I'm using Hungarian notation or something like that, I think. Anyway, you capitalize, I typed it as upper instead of lower. There we go, class, soccer player. A class is a container. It contains either actions or it contains information. A class is based on, you could think of it as a noun. It's a real-world object of some sort. There are soccer players, there are humans, there are cars, there are Toyotas, there are rocket ships. We could do this with anything. Now, the first thing that we want to do is create some methods. So what do soccer players do? Well, we're going to define a method because a method is the class doing something. So we're just going to say that the soccer player does a kick, and he kicks the ball. So we're just going to call it kick ball. We always have to have self in our methods and our attributes, meaning the stuff that's stored with our class. That ties everything together. Self is the glue that holds together our classes. So how do we kick a ball? Well, we aren't actually going to kick a ball. This is not a graphical program, but we're going to return a string that says ball kicked. There we go. So we've kicked a ball. Well, the soccer player class can't kick anything. However, over in our main program, we first have to import the code from this file. So we're going to import soccer player class. Now that allows us to work with any code that's over here. The first thing we're going to do is create a soccer player. So I'm going to create one called Bill. We do that by doing Bill soccer player class because we have to reference the file that it came from, and then we reference the class. So dot soccer player, put in a parenthesis, that creates a soccer player. This is the file that it's in. This is the class that we're going to create an object from. We assign this to this variable, which now contains the object. It contains the class. It contains right now just kickball. All right, so now we can do, Bill knows all about all the code and everything that's in this file. So Bill knows how to kick a ball. So Bill, kick ball. Well, we're not going to see anything because when you return information, you just return information. It doesn't do any good until you display it. One way to display it is just to print it out. This is returning from this method, which is just another name for a function. A function is what you call it when it's not part of a class. You call it a method when it's part of the class, but it's the same idea. We're accessing kickball. We call kickball. That returns ball kicked to here. And when we print it out, we can see that ball kicked. Well, that's not too bad. What else do soccer players do? Well, they score goals. So let's do a score goal. Notice each of these are verbs, things that the object or the class can do. So we're going to score a goal. SELF, self is the glue that ties it together. So if we store a goal, we can do a lot of things. Let's see. We need to store our goal maybe. So let's create a self.goal. No, let's keep it simpler. Let's just return goal scored. To keep going with this for a second. Then we'll change it. Goal scored. We can do the same thing. We can print Bill dot score goal. Ball kicked, goal scored. Well, at this point, all we've done is do something. We haven't actually stored anything. To store something, we need to create a variable. And we want to create it when the class is initiated into the object. So we're going to use a line called init, DEF, and IntelliSense will kind of fill it in for you. Pass means that until we fill something in, it's not going to cause an error. Well, we are going to do self.underscore goals. Yeah, we'll just say goals. And to start with, our soccer player has 0 goals. Each time he scores a goal, we're going to add one to his score. So self-score, or self-goal, sorry. Well, that should be a singular, because you only score 1 goal at a time, right? Equals self.goal plus 1. That'll increment each time. The only time this is called is when we create the object. So we should probably put our current goal in here. To do that, we're going to create an F string. Because we don't have a print statement around it, it is still a string. Now what should we say? Goal scored. We'll just put the number in here. So self dot underscore goal. And then, oops, I wanted a parenthesis, hit the wrong keyboard. And then we'll say goals scored. It'll sound kind of silly. I wanted a curly brace. It'll sound kind of silly the first time around, but we're not going to worry about grammar at this point. So self.goal starts at 0. Every time we score a goal, we add 1 to it. All right, well, let's call this method. So we score a goal. Guess what? We could score 2 goals. We could score 3 goals. Let's see what happens. Yeah, see, it does sound kind of silly in English, 1 goal scored. We're not going to worry about that. But see how it added up each time? Once this variable is created, it exists for the entire life of the program. Well, I think our soccer player should have a name. How do we put a name, and we want the user to enter it? We would do a comma here and put in a name. Remember? Parameters. This is just like functions. This means that when I create the soccer player, which is like calling the soccer player init method, I have to put in a name here. But I can't pull the name from the middle of the air. I need input from the user. So I would create an input statement, like we have done in the past, that says, enter the player's name. We'll enter the player's name into here. When we create our Bill soccer player. That name will get passed into here. We want to remember that name so we don't have to type it in all the time. So we will assign the incoming value, which is this one, to self.name. So far, so good? Well, let's put, let's get the name, and then we'll use it another way. There's something in OOP called getters and setters. If we want to just get the name and not do anything else, we would do this. It's a standard method, but all we return is self.name. Oops. Underscore name. That makes it private. There. So we can set the name here. We can return it here. What if we want to change it? We would use a setter. Set name. And in this case, we need a colon there. We have to pass in, just like we did before, name. And just like we did up here, we have to take the incoming value and assign it to the internal variable. From that point on, self.name would have this value. Well, let's set a name and get a name. So we've already created the name here. And I think instead of Bill, since the name could be anything different, let's do a little handy thing that's in Visual Studio Code. Notice how you click on something, it highlights all of them. If I press the F2 key on my keyboard, I can just say player. When I do that and press enter, it changes everything to player. So now it doesn't matter what name I put in. Well, we're scoring 3 goals, that's fine. Let's print out the player's name. Maybe we'll print it out right here. So player dot get name, right? That gets the name, but we probably should do something with it. You can print a method directly. You can also use that method to assign that value to another variable, and then you would print that variable. We'll use our F string, and we'll just say my name is, and we handle this just like we've done everything else, player's name. Except the value for the player's name, instead of coming from an input, we're pulling it from the class because we already input the player's name up here. And then the player's name was set into the object when we created it. And then we get the name and we print it out and we say my name id. My name is. Then the player kicks the ball, scores a goal, scores a goal, scores a goal. Well, let's see how that works. It's always good to test your program early and often. So I'll use my middle name, which is Arthur. There, my name is Arthur. Ta-da! But what if I don't like ball kicked? What if I want to say Arthur kicked the ball? Well, I could do that here, or I could just change my return statement. That means that every time I return, it's going to have the same thing, which is fine with me. So I'll put my F in front. I want to say Arthur kicked the ball, so I put in self._name with my curly braces, and then I'll say kicked the ball. Let's try that one. So we'll use Floyd this time. I don't know who Floyd is. My name is Floyd. Floyd kicked the ball. I could even say Floyd scored 1 goal. Floyd scored 2 goals. Floyd scored 3 goals. Let's change Floyd's name. Well, we already know how to get the input, but we don't want to recreate the object. We're going to use our setter. So we would use the object to set the name that we just typed in. And then we would do this. We'd get the name and then print it. So we've set the name, we get the name, and then we print it. So a get is from the class going out, a set is from the program going into the class. That's why they're called setters and getters. So let's see how that works. There we go. This time the player's name will be Brian. And the player changed his name to Cecil. There, my name is Cecil. That's the basics of what you need to know to do the car class or any other vehicle. Instead of kicking the ball, you could accelerate, go faster. You don't have to do a car class. You could do any kind of sports player, an apple, a spaceship. It could be a building. It can be anything that's a noun that exists. That takes care of that. I hope that helps you finish your assignment.